Okay.
This is Tuulia.
This is Pete.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Where to start? Well, I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to see you guys and I'm happy for the ones who I'm not seeing to be here. Um, we've been together a bit over 10 years and I think one of the greatest thing about like intimate relating and connecting is that the deepest shit comes up, the biggest wounds, and then there's a chance to work on them and it can get quite tough. And then there's a lot of what I consider opportunity for healing, like to be seen and heard and witnessed in my journey in a way that maybe, well, at least for me, I was never quite in that way seen by anyone and somebody being willing to say true everything. So this topic is very dear to my heart and like all human relationships and how we can heal and grow and also look at the shadow sides of us. And okay, I didn't say much about me. I'm from Finland. We are here in the woods by a lake. There's a lot of snow around. This is our retreat center and home. We've been leading workshops and retreats, Pete and I, under the name Honesty Europe since 2015. And I still love this work. It's super cool for me.
Thank you. I'm Pete. I'm married to Tuulia. I also live here in the woods of Finland with her. And I like that I have experience before and after this kind of practice of radical honesty in this relationship with Tuulia. When we met more than 10 years ago, I was not practicing being open about myself, even though I thought I was. I thought I'm not lying, but yet I wasn't very comfortable sharing about the most difficult things. I wasn't very good at being in the presence of Tuulia when she was sharing difficult things. I was very good at running away. In fact, first time Tuulia really got angry at me, I handled it by breaking up with her by email, no less.
Tips, don't do that.
And then learning this practice of that we'll be discussing this evening benefited me greatly, especially going to the most challenging things I didn't want to talk about and actually talking about it and staying present, dealing with them, getting to a better place together. It works a whole lot better than how I was handling things before using this practice. And a whole lot more happiness and joy and contentment, and a whole lot less time spending alone with my thoughts, especially being alone with anger or alone with sadness. That's me, Tutur.
Thank you both. I'm really surprised every time, even though you said it, that you from how you moved on to the email breakup and now where you are. It's really nice again to hear you introduce yourself. So I think the goal for this webinar is for people here to discover a bit more about your work with Honesty Europe. And I'd be really happy if by the end of this webinar, every one of you here gets some little tips and practical tools that you can use with your partners, with your friends, any type of relationship, really. This is not only about romantic relationships, but I think this applies to most of them. So to get there, I would love to maybe ask you, Pete, just what would be for you the most important aspect of your work when it comes to being honest in relationships?
Well, one thing that was really important for me was when I noticed things were getting uncomfortable, where the conversation was moving towards a topic that was uncomfortable for me, or me feeling like I was being blamed or being angry, you were angry at me, or even when I was angry and not in touch with it, that I would just break contact. I would either shut down, which could mean me leaving the room, me closing my eyes, or as I mentioned, just ending the relationship. That's a whole lot easier than dealing with whatever was at hand. And didn't realize at the time that for me, a lot of what that was going on was just not being able to deal with the discomfort of the situation. And that discomfort was, a lot of it was in my body, that I was, all that tightness or tension when the topic would be raised or during a tricky part of a conversation. I wanted to, all this physical discomfort to go away. So I just wanted to change the subject or leave the room or leave the relationship. And our practice here that we're doing is body-based. We are paying attention to what is happening in our bodies. And once I learned to do that, I started learning when I was getting angry, or even more so when I was no longer being angry, when I was getting over my anger after I expressed my anger directly. So I was spending a whole lot less time being angry by expressing it. And yeah, my body was very key to all that. Yeah, that's what I want to share.
Yeah. So like I get maybe like the most important point of what you say is really like not going away, but instead like tuning into the body sensations and expressing that also to the other person. And
Yeah,
I
then
kind of
creating the, I do want to add creating those resilience of, oh, I've been here before. I've noticed this tightness, this sweatiness. I noticed this is where I usually want to run away or change the subject or something. And I'm going to stick with it. I imagine in just a minute or two, these physical sensations are going to shift. They'll probably lessen or lighten or whatever. And then they pretty much quite often, if not almost always, if not always, they do shift and end up getting to a better place by going through that, the shittier place. That there's not really a shortcut around it or under it, over it. You kind of have to go through that discomfort. And for me, yeah, paying attention to that physical discomfort, working through it and getting to a better place with Tuulia.
And because we're in a webinar, I think we are very activated with our brains right now. And actually, I think it would be nice that we have a little moment where every one of us can just like say, hey, what's happening in my body right now? And maybe like you can notice if you're sitting on a chair, or what do you notice with your legs or your feet on the floor? Maybe some people are eating something. And just like, yeah, basically seeing what's there. And I would invite a few people who feel like to, yeah, just tune in and write in the chat, what do you notice in your body? And then maybe we could have like one or two person expressing themselves, like what's alive for them right now.
Well, I can kick us off with that. I've noticed some tightness in my belly and some sweatiness under my arms right now.
I notice heat in my face, very warm.
I noticed some expansion of my chest and some tension in my back. And if other people want to share, you can just open your mic and share what you notice in your body.
I noticed some tension in my shoulders and neck. I'm often kind of leaning forward a little bit without realizing it. And so noticing it just now, I can relax and take out the tension.
We have Maria saying, I notice tightness in my chest and feel energy flowing in my belly. And Jean, tension in the chest. Marley saying tightness in my neck as well. And maybe someone else can, the last person can open the mic and share.
Thanks, Hannah, for sharing. Thanks for speaking.
I noticed like a fullness in my tummy. I've just eaten some food, so that will be why, but also like a tightening of my trousers there too.
Thank you. So without having so much time like right now to share everyone, and I really appreciate like seeing you writing in the chat what you notice in your body. Yeah, I think this is like the very important, most basic aspect of connecting with the body and tuning in with what's there. And I think Tuulia, we wanted to bring some distinction though when it comes to the relationship, like how to use this noticing as opposed to like what we imagine, or more like kind of what is in our brain. Could you share something around that?
Yeah, well, I think all sharing is important, and I tend to invite whatever is alive to be shared, what feels important. And there is kind of, we say 3 things we can notice at any given time: what we see with our eyes or hear with our ears, what we notice as sensations, like we were just checking in, and then the thoughts. And many of us, at least I am, very good at staying a lot in my head, in my thoughts, and believing that whatever I'm thinking, it's kind of true and it's the reality. And what we do in our workshops and in our work is separating and having a clear distinction: what is actually factual, and then what is an interpretation or thought about the facts, what happened. And in a connection, it can happen something like, I notice the look on your face, and I imagine you're unhappy with me or you're angry. And that's just a thought. So the only thing I can factually notice is like something in the face. And then everything else is something I'm creating. And then I can easily get into trouble in the relationship and relating to people in my life when I believe that my thought is true. It might be true, it might not be true. It might be that something else is going on. Maybe Pete is troubled, but it's nothing to do with me. Or maybe he's angry, but again, it's nothing to do with me. So the best thing is just to kind of voice, I notice your face and I imagine you're angry with me. Is that true? And then really checking in and asking, rather than just being up and running with the thoughts and interpretations. And like what I have noticed within myself, that it can start with like, B didn't do something we agreed he would do by a certain deadline. And then instead of just sticking with the fact that he didn't do it, it's like, oh, he doesn't find what he agrees with me important. So thus he doesn't find me important. He actually doesn't love me. He doesn't like me that much. What I want or what he agrees with me is not a priority. And I'm up and running. And all of a sudden I'm kind of like, okay, we're breaking up, kind of spiral of thoughts, rather than what actually happened. Stay with that. Okay, then I might have an interpretation and emotion coming up, and then checking in and sharing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I do think that the most annoying thing is assuming that I know what's going on for the other. You are angry, you are hungry, you are sad.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tuulia. Like, I especially like the moment where you also speak about just checking in, because all of these stories, we have them in our head, and it's really nice. Also, this moment of showing vulnerability, just like sharing, hey, this is what I noticed about body, so this is kind of my experience. This is what I imagine, and it kind of like, is it true? And then also showing somehow vulnerability and allowing the other person to also express themselves, inviting. I think it's really helpful for me. Yeah.
Totally underused the little magic words. Is this true for you? Is this going on, or what is going on?
Yeah. I have some questions in mind actually about how you use radical honesty and the work that you're doing with honesty, your working relationship. So there was some topics that we wrote down we wanted to address as part of this webinar. And I would love you to answer quickly, like the first thing that pops up about those questions. And the very first question, maybe Pete, you can start, is what to do when your partner says they're not keen on having honest conversation. Because maybe people are not into that. What do you do?
Well, I would check if they're willing to do it ever, because there might be moments when it's not as a good time. We were driving through the snow yesterday or a few days ago, and I forget what the topic was, but there was some heated topic, and I was like, "Now's not a good time. It's dark and it's snowing. The road is icy. You want me to drive faster even, and then you want to bring up this topic." So I was not keen on having that conversation in that moment. But so checking in if they're keen on another time to have that conversation, time that suits both parties. But also if the other parties are not really keen on talking and sharing, that doesn't mean I still can't talk. I can't still share. I don't want to be in any relationship, not just romantic relationship, but any relationship with my friends, for example, or family members, where I can't still talk about myself and talk about what's troubling me or talk about my victories and my joys in my life. And quite often what has happened for me is other people are inspired to have honest conversations with me when I do share more openly, more honestly, not out of some strategy of trying to trick them into being honest, but I certainly feel more connected by sharing what's really going on with me. Maybe I repeated myself there.
I like that you're repeating yourself. Also, because I noticed some tension in my back. Like I remember moments where maybe after I go through a training and I experience the practice of being honest, sharing myself more. And there's the moment where, of course, somebody might say, I don't want to have an honest talk right now. But also there's a moment coming to a person who has not at all the same type of background and experience, and kind of having to for me, like talking in honest way is can be actually really hard. And it's also kind of create expectations on the other side that I remember expecting from my parents, that I would share what I notice, and when they only share what they imagine, I get like really tense and angry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see you nodding, and actually I want to ask you, maybe Tuulia this time, like how do you introduce this practice, or how do you do with people who are not at all familiar to them?
I think it goes a bit on the same vein. Like, am I doing it to change the other person, or is my motivation to share what is alive for me and then be open and curious about what is there for you? And if I'm in that place, in an open, curious place, then it is about me sharing and opening up and making an invitation. So not a demand or command, because that's not something most people react well to. And my theory, and it's been tested several times, is like when there's a connection and one person changes, then the connection is already changing without the one person not needing to do anything or be any different or change in any way. So I would say that how to introduce is just to model, this is how I want to be, this is how I want to share, is that okay with you? And then they can still decide how far they go in, like moment to moment. So I judge invitation is far better than kind of expectation or command. And if I have an expectation, maybe then just own it. I have this expectation and still I choose you as you are. And I think that's really vital, like to own up. Do I want you to be different? And am I doing things like directly or indirectly to make you different? Or am I still willing to love you, like you, exactly as you are? There might be parts of you and I'm not like super keen on all the time, and still this is my choice. I don't get to have a choice. I choose you and you need to be different. I only have a choice. I'm with you as you are, or I'm not with you as you are. And these are the choices. So also here kind of understanding that people have their own path, and sometimes some people are not quite as ready. So I think also little steps, and we will talk about few tips a little bit later. So those could be something to use to introduce this kind of open way, honest way of being with the other.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's also a couple of questions in the chat, and maybe first I read the one from Lisa, who was asking how to see if somebody is willing to have this honest and vulnerable conversation. I think you answered that, Tuulia. And what pops up to my mind is also there's the possibility even to ask very directly, are you willing to have a conversation with me where I can be honest? I mean, and I'm not asking your permission, but actually I will be honest, and will you be honest with me as well? And I think this is just very powerful already to use that. And I read there are some questions in the chat, and maybe we'll leave them for now and address them in the question and answer later.
Yeah. And I like those questions, so yeah, I'm happy to go back to them in a bit.
Yeah, maybe let's close a bit like this talk with like heading again back to like the very practical tools. So now we've seen noticing our body, not avoiding, but expressing ourselves clearly in honest and vulnerable ways towards the other person. We've seen the appreciation. And no, we've not seen. Oh, we didn't see that. Sorry, that was in my head. Oops. Oops. Yeah, I feel warm saying that now. That was part of my plan. And
where in your body do you notice the warmth? Tutur?
Yeah, I noticed the warmth in my throat right now. Not only, also I feel shaky. I'm like, oops. No, and tension in my jaw as well. I notice I want to smile. And and I feel heavy right now. Yeah.
I'm actually very cool you not being like a robot who is just going through a script, but just going with the flow. So I appreciate you, Tutur, for making a mistake. Quotation marks, because I don't much believe in mistakes.
What about appreciations? Because I think this is where I wanted to go. And
Cool.
yeah, I think like what was popping up is that, of course, in relationships, it's useful to say like vulnerable things, like maybe what can be hard or what can be the things I notice and I imagine. And one exercise I really liked that you showed me, Tuulia and Pete, in the retreats we had together is the how to share appreciations towards another. And I wonder if you could share something about that and demonstrate it maybe.
Yeah. Well, not many of us are not so skillful or even learned in our family of origins. I certainly didn't learn in my family of origin, for example, how to express appreciation or even how to receive appreciation. Somebody expressed something appreciative to me, I only knew how to bat that away or sort of push it down, saying, "Oh, it's no big deal," instead of just receiving it. And I also had some sort of thought that if I ever expressed appreciation once, that it's impossible to express it again, or not to express things for little things. I just didn't hear that in my life. So, but we find the power in any relationship, and especially romantic relationships, of sharing our appreciation directly to the person. So, for example, using our ad language is about me. I'm saying this from a vulnerable place, and it's about you. So I appreciate you. I'll give some real life examples. I'll appreciate you for walking on the lake with me today. And then you tell me.
Thank you. I let it land. I don't rush. Because that's the one trick as well, immediately needing to return the favor. So I'm just noticing it, letting it land, feeling my face. I appreciate you for wearing that shirt today.
Thank you. I appreciate you for getting the wood in the sauna ready for our sauna after this call.
Thank you. I appreciate you for planning a trip to Japan with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you for discussing what the dinner options are for later this evening.
Thank you. I appreciate you for how often you appraise my cooking.
Thank you.
So maybe that gives an idea.
Yeah.
Being specific for what the person actually said or did that you appreciate them for. Even the small things, or what you consider to be small.
Yeah. Really nice. It's always quite actually moving for me, like to see you watching each other, like really looking at each other. I imagine you looking at each other. Maybe you're not.
We were, yeah.
And yeah, being really specific. I like that. And I'm
Maybe I
excited.
could. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to say I'm excited about your evening.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I appreciate you were saying that, Tutur. Sauna and dipping into the ice hole is always exciting. I wanted to make an invitation for you on the call that would you be willing to share in the chat what do you appreciate your partner for if you have a partner, or what do you appreciate your friend for if you have like any of your friends or anybody in your life? And if you happen to be in the same room, you can just tell them right now. While we are gonna move on, but just gonna check in right now. What appreciation is life for you towards the person in your life? And you can write in the chat, I appreciate Jack or Chill or John for this and that, or I appreciate my partner for whatever did they, something concrete, something tangible, not like being always loving and amazing. There's already the first one.
Nice. I appreciate you, Tutur, for supporting me and Tuulia in leading this call.
I appreciate you, Pete, for how many times you appreciated me. Oh. Yeah. I appreciate you, Tuulia, for how many calls we have about those webinars and that you say you want to work with me in the future. Maybe you didn't say that, but I imagine you want to work with me in the future.
Yes. And I imagine I did say that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling warm reading the appreciations in the chat. Very sweet.
I'm giving some hearts to them.
Yeah, hearts to everyone. Keep it going, and I'll hand over to you, Tutur. What happens next?
Yeah, and I'm also really happy to see all of these people writing in the chat and so much love being shared. Oh, it feels really warm. Maybe like I would propose we jump a bit to the other side of the spectrum. Like, okay, it's nice to share what we appreciate about other people, and I find it more difficult to share what I really don't like, or when I'm angry, and things like that. So I wonder, yeah, what are for you the good practical tools that you could give on like expressing anger, especially in other heavy types of emotions? Peter or Tuulia, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'll kick off. Was similar to just how we did the appreciations. When sharing anger, trying to be specific for what the person actually said or what they actually did that you're angry about. It's quite different to say I'm angry at you for not caring about me. Imagine our partner would say, well, I care about you, and get into an argument over if that's correct or incorrect or whatever. As opposed to angry at you for forgetting my birthday, or I'm angry at you for being 10 minutes late for a meeting. And then I interpret that as being you not caring about me.
Or a real life example, you were angry at me for talking about stuff in the car that you didn't want me to talk about.
So then expressing the anger, noticing my sensations in the body, and noticing when things shift. Because when I have that full expression of anger, that full bodily experience, staying with it, not being up in some sort of rage thing where I'm screaming or yelling, and also not underdoing it, where I'm kind of whispering it or kind of downplaying it, but fully owning it, saying it, remaining present, my partner remaining present with me, and noticing a shift. It's quite powerful because it's amazing, because I prided myself on so many years of not expressing anger in my relationships, saying, wow, I'm such a great partner because I don't express my anger. And yet that didn't mean I wasn't angry. That didn't mean the anger was going away. It meant the anger was coming out in other ways, usually passive aggressive ways, which weren't very healthy for the relationship, which weren't very healthy for me. So I spent more time with this sort of angry buzz and being, not fully connected with my partner. And now learning this practice and expressing the anger more in the moment, recognizing in the moment, expressing it, and then having that sort of emotional wave with my physical sensations, noticing when I'm getting over anger. So it's a bit counterintuitive that in this relationship with Tuulia for the past 10 years, it's the relationship I've expressed my anger the most. And at the same time, it's the relationship where I spent the least amount of time being angry, because I'm far less often alone with that anger, thinking about it on my own or trying to push it down, trying to push it away. And then allowing Tuulia to know what's going on with me. Maybe she's angry at me for being angry, or she's angry at me for something else. But we don't live in separate sort of bubbles with these thoughts that are thoughts and emotions that we're not sharing with each other. We're having far more shared experiences and spending far more time in a better place with each other.
Yeah, I like what you said. And I would add that for me, anger is a friend of love, because I can definitely, we all know how it's not to share. So it's there, and there's kind of this smell and taste, and it sneaks out maybe some nasty comments or tone of voice or rolling eyes or leaving the situation or something. So we do all get angry. That's the part of human experience. And for me, why anger is friend of love is that when I express it, I actually dare to show myself to the other, and I'm not hiding, and I'm taking the chance that they will get very upset or they get blamey or whatever, but I'm like being honest and open with my emotions, and not from a blamey place. So being clear that this is my emotion, I created it within me, and it is to do with you, and I'm expressing it in order to get over it and get to another place. So that's the way we were talking about, like, or didn't like that, I'm angry at you for that. And then it's actually quite fast that it happens in the body, this kind of little air going out, body relaxing, and then we can move on. And for me, often it's like just a few minutes, and then like after half an hour, I don't even remember sometimes what I was angry about. And we are really after that it doesn't pile up, that there's this little thing and that little thing and the third little thing, and then it's a mountain, and then somebody explodes, but rather immediately in the moment when it's still kind of quite small. Didn't like that.
Thank you. I like the very detailed explanation, because there was the part that more Pitu said, like what happens when we are avoidant, we don't share. But I also see the counterpart where like people are sometimes also very explosive. And in fact, I found this is connected. When we don't share, it piles up, as you just said, Tuulia. And yeah, I think that I would like also to connect for everyone else here, like to really connect with, again, what we spoke about, noticing first, like when anger is coming. This means kind of being in tune with the body and sharing that when it still smalls. It is a lot less somehow scary. I mean, probably because I'm scared of expressing anger. So for me, it's a lot less scary. And I imagine it allows also for like not being super explosive and suddenly like out of a volcano, but like I'm angry about this, and specific and straight to the point. Yeah. You want to say something, Peter or Tuulia?
No, I liked how you said that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I see we have quite a couple of questions in the chat. I will ask you to hold on for an extra 1 minute, because I would just like to ask you one last question, Pete and Tuulia. Maybe Tuulia, you can start. The last question would be, if there would be one tool that you think people in a relationship could use every day as like, it not necessarily like I have something to share with you, but more like as a tool for sharing each other and cultivating connection, what would it be?
Yeah, I like the framing. I really love this very simple practice of what we call the 5-minute sharing. So basically, both partners have 5 minutes to share without any interruption, questions, comments, fixing, helping, nothing. So I have my 5 minutes. We can put a timer on, and then it's my time to share what is alive for me, how I'm doing. It can be about like how was my day, if it's after a work day, or in the morning, like how did I sleep, what's my mood music, how I'm doing. So 5 minutes for me. The other one is silently witnessing. Of course, they notice what happens in them, like emotions, sensations, thoughts, but no interruptions. Then it's switching, time for the other, and again, I'm the witness. And then I often recommend that there's not a conversation time necessarily needed afterwards. So it's not like we are now going to debate and have a conversation of each point, but rather learning on a daily basis to just listen and relax into witnessing the other. Because I do think that many of us didn't really learn the great art of listening. And all of us, we just so deeply, at least I do, like I just want to be seen and heard. I don't need advice unless I ask for it. I don't need fixing. I'm already okay. But I just want the other one to hear me. And in that way, we actually learn a lot about the other. And we have this ongoing way of just being witnessed. And this little thing can change everything. When I work with couples in couples therapy, this is the first thing I recommend them to do.
Thank you for
I
sharing
like
that.
it also more. I learned how to listen as we do it. We do this every day, and also I gave myself permission to share about myself, share about what's going on for me. I think before I had this learning to have this dedicated time from you, for you listening to me, I felt like I need to rush. I need to keep you entertained. It's almost like ping pong with the conversation. And I'm like, oh, right now I have 5 minutes to talk about anything I want right now. This is nice. As we did it this afternoon while walking around on the lake, there was things that I shared that I probably wouldn't have shared about if I didn't know that I had your 5 minutes, because they're pretty mundane. Those things were rather mundane, not spicy or challenging. Actually, the mundane things too that I want to talk about, that I imagine maybe you would be bored. I'd worry that yourself would be bored with me hearing these mundane things from me, so I shouldn't even bother saying them. So I like having this agreement from you. You're willing to listen to me, whether it's challenging or boring or whatever.
And Yvonne also shared in the chat one very magic sentence, I hear you. So having kind of this confirmation, just little sharing that from the other person that I'm heard.
And another point yesterday, also when we were in the car driving, and I shared something emotional for me. I just finished a Finnish language intensive course, and Tuulia came and picked me up. And I shared something emotional, that how I was after finishing this course with these others. And I want to share with Tuulia. And then you started to say something. I said, I don't want any advice.
I asked, I have a thought, do you want to hear? And you said no.
I said, no, I just want to express my emotion. I don't want you to try to fix my emotion or change my emotion. I just want to express it. I want you to hear me with it. And then later, maybe I'll be willing to listen to what advice you have for me around this situation.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot more about like listening, giving advice and stuff. And maybe I make a little teaser on the next webinar. We're also going to talk about that even further. Enough talk.
All about that.
I think thank you, Pete and Tuulia, for sharing all of that with us. I think we've seen like really many tools, like the noticing your body, experiencing yourself, and then sharing it with our people, appreciation, the 5-minute sharing, and I think I'm forgetting some. And now I want to give the floor to people. I see there's so many questions in the chat. I'm so happy about that. Usually it's quite the opposite. And I think we don't have so much time. So what I would just propose is that when you have a question that you feel is really burning after hearing Pete, Tuulia, and I talk so much, that you can just open your mic and ask your question, possibly in a short way. And we'll try also, please, Tuulia and Pete, give short answers so we have more time for more questions. So that's time for you. You can just open your mic and start asking your questions.
I would
I
love
can
to
just
ask my
jump in. I see Jean's question about 5-minute sharing.
Perfect.
What do we recommend in terms of reactions, like nodding, smiling, making faces, or nothing at all? I like the affirmative nodding, smiling, ways of saying I hear you, I understand you, I am listening, without it being on autopilot or just reflexive. And I want that from the person I'm talking to as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's my answer.
Anyone else wants to ask a question? Or Pete, would you rather have me taking those from the chat? I don't get it. I thought.
I guess so, yeah.
Ah. Well, I yeah.
Can I just talk to, there are 2 comments about I hear you. So for me, there's a difference between I hear you and I understand and da da da. So I hear you is kind of acknowledgement that I was listening. I did take in what you're saying. And then of course there might be a need for having a conversation or make agreements and so on. So that's kind of the separate step. And sometimes somebody just wants to share something for sake of sharing. So instead of me kind of going into a deep conversation about what they said, the first thing would be, oh, thanks for sharing. I hear you. I'm like here. And then but for me, that's not everything. So sometimes it's indeed, I might want to check in, hey, what do you think about this point? Or do you get me? And then we can go to a deeper conversation. And sometimes it's not necessary. And one thing that we do, Pete and I, is that we separate like, hey, I want to share something and I don't want your opinion right now about it. I just want you to hear me, that I have space to share. Or I want to share a few minutes about something and then I want to have a discussion or find an agreement or something like that. So be also clear, what is your expectation? What is your motivation for sharing? Is it just to have the space to kind of get something out of your chest for the other one to know what's up for you? Or is it about, I want to have a conversation, I want you to know that this is my opinion, I want to hear what's your opinion. So also being clear about the frame of the conversation. I think that's where things often go wrong, that I have an expectation, I don't tell it to you, you have another expectation, and then we are kind of in a and there I think both parties can take responsibility and say, hey, what do you want? How do you, what's your expectation? What's your motivation?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tuulia.
thanks. That's nice. How do you say it in English? A nice surplus on what I asked. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I think Kate also was alluding to this. And sometimes also I can say, hey, I really appreciate you for sharing, or I hear you and I don't agree, or I don't have the same point of view. So both being in kind of a mindset of, hey, I do want to hear you, and I don't need to agree with you, or I just don't agree with you, and separating those two.
Do you have another question for us, Tutur?
I would kind of like to go back to what I proposed, that the people who feel like they want still to ask their question can just start with that.
I had a question in the chat earlier, which is when you ask someone, I imagine this, I want to know what's going on for you, I want to check. and somebody says, gives you some kind of narrative about what's going on for them, and you don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and genuinely, you know, like it might be the sense that they find it so hard to be straight about their anger that sometimes I may not believe that they're, you know, I feel I'm getting a cover-up story.
Ah.
Mm.
Well, we advise as much as possible to stick with our own experience and not to try to tell people about their experience, like you're covering up or you're not being straight with me. So I think you're covering up. I don't feel like this is you're sharing everything. I worry that you're not sharing everything with me in this moment. That if it's about anger, I worry that you're saying that you're not angry and that you actually are. And I'm not saying that's factual. Just saying this is my experience, how I'm thinking what's going on right now.
Yeah, I at some point kind of just decided that I just have the benefit of the doubt. I just believe people, and then and because I have the thinking that sometimes we are only aware of what we are aware, and sometimes people are less aware, or something comes out of the body language and the face and the tone of voice where I think I'm reading something and I might be even right, but they're just not aware of it. And no matter how much I kind of invite or share it, they're just not, that's not coming to surface. So for me, it's like, okay, you are where you are in terms of what you're aware of or what you're willing to look at, because sometimes it's just so scary or so like, oh, and some people just have maybe less tools, or they have some really shitty experiences, so they are very cautious. So for me, then it could be, if I'm able to go to curiosity, like, I'm wondering what is the life for you? How is this landing for you? What is, like, are you willing to share something? And maybe with very open questions, there could be something more that they feel more relaxed and free to share. But yeah, sometimes people are just not having everything coming to surface, and then later it might be right that they were angry and they were just not somehow able to express it and access it. And if I can like approach the other one with compassion, then everybody wins. And that's what I think. And sometimes I cannot, and then okay, I share that. I'm a bit frustrated.
Thanks. I appreciate that about you. I'm not sure I share it, but I do appreciate it in you.
Let's have another couple of minutes for one last question.
I have a question I would love to ask. And I'm a bit nervous about trying to make it really clear. It's like something like, I think Marlo and I experienced that we just have ongoing anger that runs from, we try and express it, and it runs from day after day after day. And we keep trying to have moments to express it, and then the other expresses later on in the day, and the other, and it seems to kind of roll onwards, like in which we spend days continually angry with each other. And I don't really know, is that the way it's just not fully expressing it, or it's like re-triggering it? It's kind of confusing. I don't really know how. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, if there's something unclear, you can ask a question to clarify for me, but that's the theme.
My hunch is that it's under expressing, so that it's not fully, the wave is not full. So that could be one thing, like, do you really allow to go to raising the voice and being in the uncomfortable situation and really staying with that? And not going to the rage either.
We're both smiling because I think we might be over-expressing as well. I don't know.
Okay, then that's an issue, yeah, because if you're really high up there, then nothing is moving anymore in the actual experience, bodily experience. So the right range, like not underdoing or overdoing. So you can try to like lower the voice a little, slow down, notice. And sometimes some things just take a long time, and it's not like, even though you do it perfectly by the book, somehow you just are not able to release it, or it takes longer time. And then sometimes a bit of mental explanation might help. So, okay, I'm going to take 10 minutes just to explain to you, how is this so triggering for me and what is really upsetting for me here? And that's not the expression phase, but that's just like really exploring. And sometimes then you might get in touch with, okay, this is about something very different. This is about my dad, and or this was about my childhood friend or my first girlfriend or whatever. So sometimes the mental helps when you're very clear that that's not the expression phase. That's just I'm exploring what is alive, and you're there hearing me out and witnessing.
I have a
In
possibility about this. Do you want to hear it?
Anna, I would rather not, because I am mindful of the time and
Great.
yeah, wondering. Yeah, I would rather not. And at the same time, maybe in what we share later, you have some more platform to talk about it and share possibilities with each other. I notice some tension, like, yeah, fear, and I don't like saying that. And I would rather move on to the end of this webinar because I want that we end on time. Yeah. And I still do notice some tension. I'm looking at you, Anna, and I fear you don't like what I said.
well, check in with Anna.
Yeah, Hannah. Do you like what I said? How do you feel about what I said?
I feel glad that you expressed what you wanted and you're holding space for this webinar to happen. So I'm happy that you're holding space for it and you're saying we're going to move on to what's next. And I'm going to put in the chat the possibility for anyone else who wants it.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks.
that. I appreciate you will put it in the chat. Yeah. And I'm looking at your faces. Oh, Ella, thank you for the hearts, Marley. And thank you everyone for coming to this webinar, actually. Thank you, Pete and Tuulia, for speaking in this webinar. Pete, I appreciate you for joining us today after you said that it's maybe not your cup of tea, always the webinar. And
More Tuulia's realm than mine. Yeah.
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 And yeah, just want to say from coming back with my facilitator's hat, that this was, again, just a webinar about practicing radical honesty in relationships. And there's a lot more to that. So the invitation is to use the tools that we showed today and to experience it in life. But also, if you're curious about like how to practice that, I really encourage you to come to the retreats and to the workshop spaces where with Tuulia, Pete coaching you, it's much easier actually to do this old practice. And I can testify for myself. I've been attending last year 8 days intensive retreat where for 8 days with a group, we just do this practice and actually much more. So it's also connected to diving into our personal life and family and tricky topics and learning how to be more honest and connected to other people in all of that. So I really encourage you to take a look at this, and I will share in the chat right now a little message with some possibilities for you to dive more into this. And yeah, maybe Tuulia and Pete, you could say a little word about how people could experience the work that you're doing and join your retreats.
Yeah, so one thing that I really, really love is the couples retreats that we lead. We have 2 coming up this year, one early April. We have, I think, 2 more spots available. And then there's a full week in August. And we have created a lot of exercises for couples. And one thing that we work on is the relationship purpose. And that's really cool, powerful work I judge. Like, what is truly the purpose of our relationship? How do I see it? And there's many other ones. And in the follow-up letter, we're going to send you a little discount code as well. So if you want to jump into the couples retreat in April or in August, we are going to give you a little discount. And they tend to be always full. So if you find excitement, do sign up rather sooner than later. And then, of course, we offer many other workshops and retreats, including the one in London that Kate mentioned.
Thank you. So, yeah, there's some links in the chat. You can click, you can check out the websites where you will see more of the events. The Facebook group where you are more than welcome to share more questions, interact with each other. And thank you so much for also sharing so much of yourself in the chat. And I wish you all a great evening. I think we're already at 7, right on time.
And maybe a little note about the next webinar, 12th of March. We're talking about presence and connection from the honesty perspective, from the work that we are doing, me and Pete. And then we have our friend Peter Muntekas, who is a circling and surrendered leadership trainer. So we are kind of bringing up together the two practices and talking about the differences, how they're complementary. So that's going to be super exciting, I believe. So if that is at all interesting to you, do join us also in March.
Super great. Thank you, Tuulia. And the link
Thank you very
is
much
in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Hope
Thank
you have a great
you.
evening. Thanks for ending us on time.
Thank
Tutur.
you.